Welcome to Lesson 2.4, all about presidential elections and judicial selections. In today's lesson, you need to know about the terms caucus, primary, party conventions, the Electoral College, and be able to describe how we choose judges and the president. Here's your overview. For slide B, we're going to actually have you watch a separate YouTube video that'll be linked inside of this one. Now, for the first topic, we'll talk about how we choose presidential candidates. There's a picture there of Barack Obama announcing his candidacy about 2 years before the election, so we have a very long presidential election process compared to most countries, which only takes a few weeks in some cases. So 24 to 12 months before the election, so that would be November of the year before the election is kind of the last date most of the time it happens. People announce that they are running for president. They usually do this by saying, "I'm exploring a run," and then they start collecting lots of money from very wealthy people and their friends. Around January of the election year, and sometimes into February, the very first caucuses and primaries are held. And the first in the nation is the Iowa caucus, which is different from a primary, and I'll explain what those two are. In a caucus, people come together in person, and they stand in a big room together, and they kind of make speeches, and they make arguments for why you should support one candidate over another, and then they move to different corners of that room, and at the end of the night, they count up how many people are in each corner of the room or in each area or each group, and they say that's how many votes that person gets. So it's a very time-consuming, but it's an in-depth way of choosing your candidate. And I should point out that what we're doing here is not choosing a Republican versus a Democrat. What we're doing is picking from among a whole group of Republicans and saying this is the one we want. Now, that's the first one in the nation is always the Iowa caucus. It serves as a big, big event for the media and for politics and all kinds of stuff, and hopefully you've heard about it. About a week after that is the New Hampshire primary, and this one always comes first as the primaries. In that, a primary election, again, you're choosing from among a group of Republicans or from among a group of Democrats. You have to choose which party you want to vote for. But you just go in and you vote. So it's just more like what we think of when we think of voting. You go into a little booth and you pick one of the candidates. Missouri has a primary election. We've kind of played with having caucuses in the past, but we do primaries for the most part. Now, during mostly the spring of the election year, there are usually debates among the candidates, so you'll get a whole bunch of Republicans on a stage and they'll ask them questions, or a whole bunch of Democrats on a stage and they'll ask them questions. So that's when you're going to see these debates among the candidates. Usually by April and May, there are a whole series of primaries that happen all through February, March, April. Usually by April or May, it's pretty clear who the candidate, the nominee, is going to be for the Democrats and for the Republicans. It has happened where they don't know until maybe June who the Democrat is going to be or who the Republican's going to be. It's not unusual for that to happen in this long scope of American history, but in the last 30, 40 years, most of the time we know by about April or May. In June or July, the political party holds a national convention. At these conventions, they have huge parties. It's 3 or 4 days of speeches, and then they formally nominate the candidate. You know who the candidate is long before that, but it's a way for basically the candidate to kick off the general election campaign. And this is a way for them to present, this is what their view and vision for America is, as if people didn't really know by that point. But this is actually also about the time when a lot of people start paying attention to the presidential campaign. The vast majority of people actually don't pay that much attention until August of the election year itself. Usually in September and October, there are a few debates between the Republican and the Democratic candidate. There's sometimes even a debate between the two vice presidential candidates, which is not usually as well watched, but they do have them, and they're kind of interesting too. Then the first Tuesday after the first Monday in November, all of the states vote for president. So here's our next slide. So on this one, you're going to need to actually click the link to watch a separate YouTube video. There aren't any necessarily slides in the next YouTube video, but it explains how we actually select a U.S. president in plain English with funny little pictures. So I'll wait here. Make sure you open that in a new tab and then come back to watch slide C. Our last topic for the day is choosing judges in the United States. Because federal judges serve for life, selecting them is a major event in U.S. politics, particularly for the Supreme Court of the United States, which you see there is SCOTUS. The process is pretty straightforward in the sense of how it works. The U.S. president nominates a person. Normally the person has already been a judge at some level, but there aren't any real qualifications. They nominate a person, usually of their own political ideology, but they won't be a very political person openly. Then the Senate confirms that candidate with a 1/2 majority vote. A lot of times they have to get a few more in order to kind of make it through the Senate's procedures. The Senate will hold committee hearings to investigate nominees prior to voting, and sometimes these turn into what we might call a media circus, with all kinds of craziness going on. Probably the most famous is the hearings investigating the current Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas, where he was accused of sexual harassment by someone who used to work with him. But like I said, these can become very, very big political and media events. They do tell you a little bit about the judges before they're selected, but I think more often they're probably used to score political points. So hopefully you've taken good notes on these two topics, choosing judges and electing the president. We'll see you next time.